Willy Klein, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Besties. This is a show, as we've been discussing, about DoItBest hardware cooperative throughout the country. The store owners in various, in 1,000 different communities that own their own store, hardware store, lumber store, and hire their own employees and bless their own customers. You were in Britt, Iowa, and you, the thing that, oh, and the other day I was doing an interview with a friend of yours, Jon Swenson's Do-it-BEST hardware. And I posted the video, and you and another lady in particular just really just spoke of the relationship of customers and Do-it-BEST, Jon Swenson. But the thing that caught my eye about you was that you are the founder, and did a mess of work regarding the National Hobo Museum. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Yep. You know, it was one of those deals where I just happened to be in the right place at the right time when Iowa historian showed up with a box of crap that said, "Here, Willy Klein, turn this into a museum." And so I started with a box of artifacts, and I had helped with the Hobo convention prior to that. I knew some of the people who came to town for the convention. You know, and Swenson was part of that local group that had been involved in a lot of different ways of supporting the annual event. And his heart was in the community very much.
Whose heart?
John's was.
Jon Swenson?
Jon Swenson's heart was definitely with the community, and he was supportive of oddball projects around the community with his hardware store, his knowledge, and his love for the community. So when I was handed a cardboard box of artifacts, is kind of a stretch, but of hobo artifacts as a start for a museum, I went to Jon for help. How do I display these things? How do I build a display? How do we do this? And a group of people called the Hobo Foundation in Britt had just purchased an old movie theater. So, you know, one of those the old cheap movie theater with the sloped floor and the stage at the far end. And it was pretty much unused for a long time before we purchased it. And that was going to be the home of this Hobo Museum. It was filthy. It was full of crap. It needed to be cleaned. And it had a darn sloped floor. And my box of artifacts contained, oh man, 50, 60, 8 by 10 black and white photographs from the 1930s and 40s and 50s.
Of hobos.
Of the Hobo Convention.
Of the Hobo Convention.
You know, the Hobo Convention had been held in Britt for since 1901, every year except for 2. And there was a photographer at a regional newspaper that had come over and taken pictures every year. And it was from his negatives that we had gotten these pictures created there. So they were very rare.
Have you ever met a hobo? Do you know, have you ever known any hobos?
I moved to Britt in 1979. And at that time, there were still some people who had traveled the rails as, you know, young men and young women, you know, and had lived that lifestyle. Of course, they were older and traveled by train less frequently, and the steam engines, of course, were gone. And that was the big era of the hobos, was during the steam train era. So yeah, some of the people, I met some of those people. I met some of those people who carried on the traditions of the hobo late into life, and got to know quite a few of them. Yeah.
What impresses me about hobos is that for 70 or 80 or 90 years, until the proliferation of the automobile and the proliferation of the interstate, trains were the way to travel, and there was work to be found and work that needed doing throughout the country, but not necessarily right here. And so I need to get from here to over there, and the way to do that was via the train, and either purchase a ticket or ride for free, you know, under the cover. But I'm impressed with hobos, that the work needed doing and the hobos did the work. They were like a service economy. It was like a service providers.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Big Town Gorman was one of the hobos back in the day, and he sharpened scissors. And he sharpened scissors for presidents. There was only 2 presidents during his time that he didn't sharpen scissors for. And there's a whole story around that, and it's beautiful. It's a wonderful story to tell and to know. I don't remember it, but I just remember Big Town Gorman was the guy who sharpened scissors. And when he came to Britt, he would sharpen knives and scissors for the ladies in Britt. So
and his name was Big Town?
Big Town Gorman. Yeah.
Big Town Gorman.
Yeah, yeah.
And he
they
was
all had hobo names. So yeah.
It was funny to discover. Do you have a hobo name? Because
I don't know if I ever had
Jon Swenson.
I don't know if I ever had a hobo name. Go ahead.
No, Jon Swenson's hobo name. Do you know what Jon Swenson's hobo name is?
No, I don't remember.
Mr. Fix-It. His hobo name is Mr.
Oh, I'm
Fix-It.
sure. I'm sure.
So I was just delighted that because my family and I have traveled the Appalachian Trail, and that's neither here nor there. But on the Appalachian Trail, they have trail names, and my trail name was Joe Dirt. So I was proud of my goofy, dumb trail name, and it was delightful to have John. And if you recollect your trail name, your hobo name, I want you to tell me.
Well, no, but I do want to brag that I am a Hobo Duchess. I was dubbed a Hobo Duchess. So regardless of whether I have an official name, I am a Hobo Duchess.
You're a Hobo Duchess.
Just to clear that up.
What do you remember what year that was? Because you were a Hobo Duchess.
Oh God, no, I don't remember.
But it was for a given year, correct?
Alabama Hobo. You had to have a king, one of the kings, the reigning king, W, and Alabama Hobo was the king the year that, and he's the one who declared me to be a Hobo Duchess. So. Oh,
and that was his hobo name, right? Alabama Hobo, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't remember his real name, do you?
I might be able to make it come,
but you definitely remember his hobo name.
Sure.
Alabama Hobo.
Yeah.
See, I want to look up Alabama Hobo and see if he's famous now, you know.
Well, he's passed away. He was an older gentleman, and that was back in the late 80s or 90s when that took place. So he's passed away now. But his son Knotman, used to bring him from Alabama to the convention every year. So, and I communicated back and forth with them quite a bit when we were getting the museum started, because they were a wealth of information. And the museum has a lot of letters from him and his son and some of their work.
How far do you live from Britt now? Britt, Iowa?
Hour and a half.
Right. And when is the last time you were in Britt?
It's been a little while.
And if I were to,
February. I haven't been any place since March.
Do you think that the National Hobo Museum, it still exists, correct?
Yes.
And do you know the woman or man that manages it, that is in charge of it?
I know the person that you can contact to find out about it. Yeah.
And they have different hours, and they're probably open different days of the week. So in other words, if I went to Britt today, I wouldn't necessarily be able to go in today, but maybe tomorrow. It depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
hold on to your shorts here. You're gonna love this.
Yes.
If you went to Britt today and you wanted to go to the museum, you would go to Mary Jo's Hobo House, which is a restaurant right across the street from the museum, and talk to Mary Jo, and she could give you a walk through the museum.
See, they're serious in Britt, Iowa. They're serious about Do-it-BEST hardware. Jon Swenson is the king of hardware in Britt, but they're serious about their hobos. And but they were serious before you came along. It sounds like, yeah, they were, because they've been doing this since 1901. And why did you move to Britt? What is your association with Britt?
My husband purchased a business in Britt, and so we moved there in '79, and he had that business until we moved here in 2012.
Okay.
So yeah,
and you're in Ames, Iowa, correct?
Right. Yep. Yep.
Sell me on Iowa. What is the big, great, cool spirit of Iowa? I'm more of a North Carolina guy, and to some extent a New York guy, but sell me on Iowa.
You know, I've been in quarantine so long, I've forgotten what the charm of Iowa is.
I know, right? It's ruining us. Yeah, the lockdown.
Yeah, you know, I think that Iowa's charm comes in a lot in its unique characters. And I think you can find unique characters regardless of whether you're in a city, right, or whether you're in Britt, Iowa, and Mr. Fix-It's walking down the street. I think that you could, and he may be walking down the street with Not Man or Blue Moon or one of the other hobos. So, you know, I think it's just the fact that there's some really, really cool people in Iowa, and very passionate about Iowa and about being here. We have great state parks. We have a fantastic state park system here.
Wow. And
they're celebrating like a 50-year anniversary or something this year. We have, you know, besides all the cornfields and bean fields and all of that, but we have some really some communities that are rich in history, rich in different ethnic groups have settled in different areas. So whether you want to go to a Czech village or a German straw barn, or, you know, a hobo convention, for crying out loud, you can do that. You can do that.
See, I want to go back in time to 1901, thereabouts, that era, and find the people that and even the hobos. I want to know why Britt, and maybe you know this, why was Britt, I mean, I see that it's a crossroads, but I want to know why Britt was the hobo capital. It became,
well, there's a sweet story about that. There's a very sweet story about that. The hobos had been meeting in Chicago prior to that. They were a tourist union, so they were unionized so that they could gather together. Otherwise, they were getting thrown in jail because they were just a bunch of hobos gathered together around a campfire, and they ended up in jail. So they formed a tourist union so that they could be unionized, and then they could have their official gatherings. And they had been doing them in Illinois. I don't think Chicago maybe, but someplace in Illinois. And there was a kind of a sparky newspaper editor in Britt at the time, and him and another buddy started, you know, over maybe possibly drinks, discussing, hey, we should give out an invitation. We should see if we can get them to come here. We should see if we can pitch them and give them, you know, free room and board, free food, give them all these things, and host them and see if we can get them to come here. And they convinced the Hobo Tourist Union 63, to come to Britt and hold their convention. And half the town was tickled about this craziness, and half the town didn't want to have any part of it. And you might say that's still kind of true.
Willy, I'm going to call you back. We're out of time.
Okay.
But if you'll let me, we'll continue this conversation. You've been a wonderful guest on Besties, Do-it-BEST hardware community. People like Willy Klein make it happen. And thank you so much for being a guest.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right.
It was fun.